Hey guys, this is God of Politics. We'll go to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. And I know I haven't made a lot of videos in a long time. I've been very busy with college and a lot of stuff going on with that. But I am back here now. I am going to be making a video today doing my final gubernatorial predictions. I'll have a Senate election prediction tomorrow. I won't have a House prediction video, but I will be posting my predictions for the House on Twitter. So if you'd like to see what those predictions are, make sure you check that out. And make sure you check out my next video predicting the Senate as well. But here are my final governor ratings. Now, there are a lot of competitive races that we have to deal with, and there's going to be a lot of upsets likely. But which states will those be is the question. Now, I think it's expected by most that Republicans will flip a certain number of seats, but, you may be surprised by which seats I think those are, or what seats it ends up being. So, we can get right into it here, starting off, of course, with the safe Republican states, including Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska. I think that Alaska will also probably go by safe margin. It could be likely, with the ranked choice voting, it makes it a little confusing to predict, but I do think that it will be a safe margin at the end of the day. I think Oklahoma, while it will be close considering how, red the state normally is, I do think it'll still probably be by above 10 percentage points, which is what I use as my margins for safe. Safe is above 10, likely 5 to 10, lean 2 to 5, and tilt 0 to 2. So Oklahoma, I think, goes by just above 10 percentage points. Similar thing with Texas, where you don't really have a competitive race there at all. Iowa, going to be safe Republican for both governor and Senate. Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama. I even think Florida will go by safe margin with Ron DeSantis. And South Carolina going by a safe margin. Georgia, I think, will go by a likely margin, but I will get back to that. But I have seen some polls saying it could be a safe margin. I am skeptical of that, but, Kemp is going to win by a large margin. Ohio, I think, also goes by a safe margin. And, of course, Vermont and New Hampshire with Kristen Sununu and Phil Scott will go by safe margins for the Republicans. Now, for the Democrats, I think California is a safe state. Hawaii is a safe state. I think that Colorado actually probably goes by a safe margin as well. I think that it goes by around 10 to 11 percentage points. Jared Polis has been pretty popular, mainly because of his COVID policies, I would say. I think that it got a lot of independents and even some Republicans on board with him. Republicans aren't nominating the best candidate, and I think that Polis will win by a pretty substantial margin. Illinois is another safe Democratic state. Maryland's a safe Democratic state. I think Connecticut could be slightly under 10 percentage points, but I'm going to say it's around, 10 to 11 safe margin there. Rhode Island and Massachusetts also safe Democratic states. Massachusetts being a flip for the Democrats, as well as Maryland. And that is going to be all of the safe states. So we have 14 safe seats for the Democrats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 safe seats in this election, 14 total so far. Republicans at 24. Now, getting into these likely margin states, as I mentioned, Georgia, I do think, is going to be a likely margin state. Georgia is a state where you have a rematch of 2018, Brian Kemp versus Stacey Abrams, but I don't think Stacey Abrams is going to do as well this time. The polls have not shown her doing very well at all. She's running behind Raphael Warnock, and at the end of the day, she's going to end up losing by a pretty substantial margin, I do believe. And that's actually going to be all of the likely margin states for the Republicans, but the Democrats do have a few. First is New York. Now, New York has been a very interesting state. It's been a lot closer than people have thought. Some Republican donors have, put a lot of money into the race. Republicans have centered the race around crime. New York is my home state as well. I have a personal connection to this. And while I do think the race would be closer than many would first assume, it is New York, a safe blue state, New York City, all of those things, but it is going to be closer than many people assume. But I don't think that Lee Zeldin's going to be able to pull it out. I think that Kathy Hochul's kind of pulled away a little bit at the end, and I think that is going to give her a victory, albeit a narrow victory and not a very convincing victory, I might add as well, but it will be a victory nonetheless. Pennsylvania, I also think, is a likely Democratic state. Republicans really just did not nominate a good candidate here. Doug Mastriano has really blown this race, and while I do think that Dr. Oz is probably going to win, I think that Shapiro probably wins by about 5 percentage points. I could see this as a lean margin state as well, but I think Shapiro is on the cusp of lean and likely. I think he wins by around 5 percentage points. and that's going to make that a likely Democratic state. I think Maine is also a likely Democratic state. Now, this is a state many people thought could flip early on, but it really just hasn't materialized for the Republicans there. And I do think that at the end of the day, it is going to go Democrat, probably by around, 7-8 percentage points. Not too bad for a Democrat in Maine. But we can get right onto the lean margin states. Republicans are already at 25, half so far, and they do have a few lean margin states, first being Arizona. Now, Arizona is a state where you do have Kari Lake versus Katie Hobbs, and Katie Hobbs really just did not turn out to be as good of a candidate as many people thought she was. She chose not to debate, and she really just has not run a great campaign, and I think that it is going to be to her detriment. And while I do think that Mark Kelly can still win, I haven't even decided what I think is going to happen in that race. It's just going to be so close, but I do think that you'll have a slight ticket splitting, and I think Kari Lake wins by around, 2 to 3 percentage points. A narrow but convincing victory, narrower than 2018, but really a failed opportunity for the Democrats there. I think Nevada is another state that is going to actually. This is the first flip that I'm projecting, but it is going to be one of a couple flips for the Republicans. I think that this is one that many people have expected and predicted. Even a lot of Democrats who, tend to overestimate Democrats, I think, are admitting that Steve Sisolak may actually end up losing this race. Republicans are running, a pretty good candidate, and I think that it is going to bode well for them. A lot of polls, as we can see here, have shown Joe Lombardo to be winning. He was a good candidate from the start. He's got a lot of good endorsements, and we look at these polls here, and Nevada polls have had a history of underestimating Democrats, but we can see here, of course, they are Republican internals, but Emerson, which is known to be a pretty solid pollster, does have Lombardo winning by a few points. So even if they underestimate them here, I do think that at the end of the day, Lombardo ends up winning probably by around 3 percentage points here. And that is going to be all of the lean margin states for the Republicans, but for the Democrats, they do have the state of Michigan. Now, Michigan's an interesting state because you do have Gretchen Whitmer here, who won by about 10 percentage points in 2018. In 2022, it's going to be much narrower than that, but I think that she has been positively helped by the fact that Tudor Dixon is not the best candidate. She's gotten a lot of fundraising. She's got a lot of name recognition. She's running in a state that Biden did win by a little bit more than states like Arizona and Georgia, so she has a little bit more of a cushion. She also has that 2018 margin, and Democrats aren't actually doing too badly in the state of Michigan, and I think that is going to bode well for her, giving her a margin of victory, probably around, similar to Nevada, 3 percentage points here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Republicans actually do make it the closer. Minnesota is another state that I'm putting at lean Democrat here. You've got Tim Walz, who, really going up against Scott Jensen, it hasn't been talked about that much because Jensen really just hasn't excited Republicans. He hasn't gotten the fundraising he needs. He hasn't gotten the TV advertisements similar to Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, and it really has not helped him. And while I think that Walz could have been pretty vulnerable early on, I think that at this point he isn't vulnerable. And I think that, while it could be a close race, and I guess saying he's not vulnerable is not the right word. He is vulnerable. I just am pretty confident in saying that he is going to win by a few points, probably by around 3 to 4 percentage points as well. But, upsets can happen, and Minnesota could be one of those states. It was very close in 2016, despite polls showing it to be not close. But if we look at the polls here, it does show Walz winning by a pretty significant margin, with the exception of Trafalgar, which has Jensen winning by half a point. But at the end of the day, I do think that Walz will pull it out. New Mexico is another state that I am putting at lean Democrat. Now, this is a state that I actually had projected flipping earlier, but I think that as things kind of went on, we saw that, while it is going to be closer than one might expect, given it is a state Biden won by a safe margin, I don't think it is going to flip. Emerson having a poll here showing Grisham up by 3. The only poll that showed Ronchetti winning was Trafalgar, from earlier in October, showing Ronchetti winning by 1. I don't think he's going to be able to pull it out, but, again, upsets can happen. It could happen in Minnesota, could happen in Michigan, could happen in Arizona. You never know, but I do think that it probably does go by a lean margin. Now, the final 3 states here, the tilt margin states, which I have being under 2 percentage points here. And I'm going to start with the race for the Republicans, and that is the state of Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is going to be a flip, I do think, but it is going to be very, very, very close, and closer than one might expect, given that it's going to be a pretty solid year for the Republicans overall. Tony Evers, really, I think a lot of people expected him this whole time to lose, and while Michaels isn't the best candidate, I do think that he will be able to beat Tony Evers and flip the Wisconsin governorship, giving the Republicans a trifecta in the state of Wisconsin. The next tilt margin state is going to be Kansas, and this is a really hard one to predict. We really haven't had many polls. You know, the fundamentals favor Republicans, but Democrats overestimated the polls for that ballot initiative about abortion, and you've got, conflicting trends. You've got a lot of things going on, mainly trends towards the Democrats in the suburban areas, which is going to be what does propel Kelly to a victory if she does end up winning, but whether she does win is very, very up in the air. This is the one that I'm least certain about, along with Oregon, which I am going to put as a tilt margin state, and both of these are going to be races that could really go either way. Kansas is a more conventional state. You just got two candidates, pretty moderate Democrat, standard Republican, and so I do think that it is going to be a very close race, but if I had to predict it as I am now, I am predicting Laura Kelly to slightly win this race. And as I mentioned, Oregon I do have going to the Democrats, and I've been flip-flopping on this too. This is going to be one of those very close races, and the polls have shown, that Christine Drazan has had a good opportunity at winning. Whether she actually does or not, it is very up in the air. As I said, Betsy Johnson, has been falling, and I think that does bode well for Democrats. Independents and third-party candidates tend to be overestimated in the polls. Most people at the end of the day end up holding their noses and voting for either of the two parties, and I think that we're going to see somewhat of that effect in this race, and I think that it is going to propel Tina Kotek to a very narrow victory. This is not a state Democrats should have to worry about very much, but unfortunately for them, they are. This is a state that I believe hasn't gone to the Republicans at the gubernatorial level since 1982, so it's been a very long time, but I do think that the streak will continue. Democrats will narrowly win this race, and I don't expect to get all of these races right, but this, looking at the facts, looking at polls, looking at fundamentals, trends, all the things that we need to look at to make predictions, this is how I think things will turn out. Democrats flipping Massachusetts and Maryland, Republicans flipping Wisconsin and Arizona, and this would shape up to be a very, very interesting election night, which is now only 2 days away. So thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later.